Karen Reed, do it. What's up, everybody? This is Benny Gold. Today we're doing a little bit of a different session here. We are actually going to focus on a case. Since I'm in Massachusetts and my guest is in Massachusetts, Boston based, we're going to look at the Karen Reed trial, which has been taking over the judiciary, the public. Everybody's talking about it here in Massachusetts, Boston side. So we wanted to bring in one of our good friends, criminal defense attorney, trial lawyer up with Elyse Hershon. How you doing?
Hello, lawyer up. Nice to see
Lawyer
you.
up. Elyse, we're so happy to have you here. Elyse has been a great friend of Lawyer Stories. She's been to a couple of our Boston events. We haven't had her on an official podcast yet, but maybe that'll come in time. We always appreciate your support with Lawyer Stories, so thanks for coming on and agreeing to talk about this huge case, the Karen Reed case.
Huge case.
Huge case. And as a trial lawyer, a criminal defense attorney, you have your private practice, you do a court-appointed work, you do federal work. This is going to be really interesting. I mean, I don't usually focus on cases with Lawyer Stories, but we focus on people, their life, their journey to becoming an attorney. But I wanted to do this because it's having such a big impact here in the Commonwealth, right? Like here's some Dunkin' right here. Cheers to Boston. Go Celtics. So anyway,
Kelly Green.
Elyse, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about murder. I love talking about murder.
Elyse loves murder. Okay, so this is a case that I feel like the public is very interested in here in Massachusetts. Very divided. The facts are disputed, I would say. So just for anybody not really familiar with the case, first of all, Google it. It's all over the news. And Elyse, we can go through the facts together. If you want to kick us off with something on, so just like normal people or people going out to have fun on January 28th, 2022, this couple went out to have some drinks at a bar, and then the clock struck midnight. They were going back to somebody's house for an after party, boyfriend, girlfriend. Tell us, what you know about what happened after that.
Absolutely. So the couple that went out, the female is Karen Reed, and her boyfriend at the time is John O'Keefe. They went out. John O'Keefe is a Boston police officer. She was in finance. She worked in Boston. They went out with a whole bunch of other people, other police officers, and they went to an after party in the early hours of January 29th, as January 28th spilled over after midnight. And Karen dropped off John O'Keefe at someone named Brian Albert's house. Brian Albert is also a police officer. And Colin Albert was there. A Fed was there, federal agent, Brian Higgins, Jennifer McCabe's sister-in-law. So there was a whole group of people, very tight-knit community, and this is in Canton, Massachusetts, just south of Boston.
Right.
And Karen dropped John off. And I think the facts thus far, up until that point, are not disputed. But what happened after that and how John O'Keefe ends up dead is why we have a trial now and why we're having this conversation and why this is such a sensational trial. And there's such strong opinions on both sides.
Right. And it's so interesting because there are two big time school of thoughts that just like divide so many people. It's interesting to see how that happens. I mean, one says, so my biggest question, so what happened basically after that was that there was a death, right? O'Keefe, they're saying he fell into the snow. They found him at like 5 a.m, the 29th. But did this death happen by his girlfriend, who he got into an argument with, like ramming the car into him on her way out, or did he get into a fight at the house? I mean, these are like two really differing opinions, right?
Absolutely.
So my biggest question, like, what would seem more plausible is that a car would hit him, because how do you go ahead and say, how does the defense make an argument that there was a fight like in the house. Like how do you go and reach for that? No, I'm not saying it's a reach because I don't know either way. I'm just evaluating the whole thing. To be honest, I just caught up on the whole thing like a week ago because people would come up to me and be like, "Hey, you're the founder of Lawyer Stories. What do you think about Karen Reed?" I'm like let me read on that. So, what would you think, Elise? How do they come up with that?
So, it's a great question, and I think that's what is so divisive here. There are two, like you said, one, you think being hit by a car is more plausible, but we need to remember here what the standard is. So the standard is on the government. It's in the U.S. Constitution,
Right.
Massachusetts Constitution. The burden of proof is entirely on the government, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We call it Commonwealth here. To prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe. She's charged with second-degree murder. She's also charged with manslaughter while operating under the influence, saying that because she was drinking and then she committed a manslaughter. Um, One or the other, it's not both, and then leaving the scene of serious bodily injury. The problem here is that both stories are viable, and
Right.
we don't know which one happened because from the beginning, there was a flagrant disregard, maybe an intentional disregard of protocol, of crime scene investigation, and of
Right.
forensics by the police that showed up after his body was found dead in the snow.
Right. So let's go back to the facts, right? So like picture yourself going out like a lot of people do on like a Saturday night or whatever night it was. It's the winter, dead winter in Massachusetts, like there's snow on the ground. You're just going to the bar, having a good time with your friends, and all of a sudden, you might have had like a little spat, a little tiff with your girlfriend. I don't know. At least you can tell me the facts if that's what it was. But and she's like, I'm just gonna drop you off at the after party, like where your friends are from the police department, right? And so she drops him off. And then all of a sudden, like, where is this guy, right? Like, did she ram the car into him, like causing him to die and be found dead at 5 in the morning? Or did he get attacked by a dog in the house? Did he get beat up? Like it's a crazy thing, and it's very hard to reconcile like those two. And my biggest question is going to be down the line because and we're going to come back to like going into the weeds, but this was a hung jury mistrial, and my biggest thing: how do you preserve the evidence to have a second trial? Like, how can you possibly preserve the evidence to be able to have a second trial? But let's go back to that evening, and we're talking both sides, like to see how each side kind of developed. Go ahead, counselor.
Yes, so there's a gap in time. We know that Karen Reed dropped her boyfriend off after midnight at Brian Albert's house in Canton. And then we know that John O'Keefe shows up dead in the front yard. What happened in those 4 or 5 hours
Right.
is what this entire trial is about. And one version is exactly what you said. She backed into him, kept going, and then led what the prosecution says is a fake search for him after he didn't come home a couple hours later. Got one of her friends, drove around, picked up actually the sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, from the house, drove around looking for him, and then finds him in the snowbank at Brian Albert's house where she dropped him off earlier. Um, the other version, and what the defense is saying happened, is John O'Keefe went in that house. Karen Reed left. John O'Keefe got in a fight with the Alberts and potentially Higgins. There was a fight between one or all or some of them. There was a dog that got involved. Likely, I have dogs. Dogs protect their owners, right? So if the owner
Right.
is getting involved in something, and it could be even someone coming in the room, a dog can attack. That's not unreasonable. And then not planned the fight, but there was some pre-existing kind of discontentment between these parties.
Yeah, so that's a big question I had, Hirsch, when I heard the attorney Hirsch, when I saw this whole thing is like, did this dude get along with his work people? Because if he didn't, like, I think that sort of plays a role in all this. What do
They
you
were
know about that?
they were not John O'Keefe was not tight with the Alberts and was not tight. based on, my understanding of what came out without personal knowledge directly. Of course, I have to say that because I'm a lawyer, so I always have to protect myself. So I don't have firsthand knowledge, but um, he was not close friends with them. That was part of the reason why Karen didn't want to go in the house with
Okay.
them. Not a big fan of them. And there's also some strange text messages. And it came out in the last trial that Brian Higgins, a federal agent who's friends with the Alberts, whose house it was sending Karen some flirty text messages. And John O'Keefe potentially found out about it. They were one-sided. As I understand, Karen Reed did not return those flirtatious texts, but it was in the weeks leading up to John O'Keefe dying. So they go to a house of a police officer who's friends with a guy who was hitting on John O'Keefe's girlfriend. That already is a situation
Oh
that's
wow.
not
Okay.
ideal to be walking into. And I
Really? So say that again. So the dude's house they went to was hitting on Karen Reed.
his friend, who was a Fed,
His friend was hitting on Karen Reed. Okay. Nice.
yes, had been sending her text messages leading up to that date. Probably that's part of the reason, or a big part of the reason why Karen didn't want to go in the house. She was
Okay.
uncomfortable. They had all been out drinking earlier, but the federal guy, Higgins, also named Brian, and the Alberts, they're all tight. They were going to the after party. They invited John and Karen over. Karen did not feel comfortable. She didn't feel well. She's like, I'm not going in there. John, if you want to go, you can let me know how it is. Dropped him off, and that was the last time she saw him. So
Wow.
potential explanation as to why there may have been beef. And again, we don't know who and where this fight may have taken place. And we can get to this in then kind of our next topic because they never went in the house and did any forensic investigation inside the house. And when I say they, I mean Canton police and homicide detectives and everyone that responded to the scene once the body was found never went in the house.
Elise,
So
do you know what those text messages said with the Fed, like when he was hitting on Karen Reed?
I know that they were flirtatious. He was interested in her. She was not interested in him. She was
Okay.
with She lived with him. She was helping raise John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, who's
Okay. Right. 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 Okay.
um,
All
they were,
right.
for all intents and purposes, heading towards, engagement or
Yeah.
marriage.
Yeah. So okay. So take me back. So the the evidence collection, like what happened. So you were just saying, like it was improper. Like they didn't even go in the house. Like they weren't even trying to.
A dead body on your front lawn, and
Yeah.
the cops come. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to interview everybody, and they're going to go in the house. The biggest reason for that, and the reason why you don't need a search warrant to go in when there's exigent circumstances, is because there is an emergent need to preserve evidence and
Right.
find specifically forensic evidence.
And that's, by the way, one of the exceptions to having a warrant, right?
Absolutely. So they
Thank
can.
you. You know how I know that, Elise, by the way? I did win the
That's
Cali.
cool.
I won the Cali in criminal procedure at Roger Williams Law. Okay, keep going. 100 years ago. All right.
Love it. I may have learned it in law school, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't call that
I
front.
love that exam, man. I loved criminal procedure, by the way. Like, there was just something about the jurisprudence that just kept widening and shrinking. And my exam was like 24 hour, like it was like an 8 hour, like once you downloaded it, you had to do it and upload it. Sick. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. I want to comment on that in a second. So evidence collection is important because one of the biggest things, and I've tried 16 homicide trials. I have my
Amazing.
17th one coming up in June. I'm part of a legal team. I'm always working with another lawyer on them.
Amazing.
I've worked on more murder cases. I've had private cases, but gone to trial for 16 murder trials, and worked with another attorney doing that. Very heavily involved with forensic experts, DNA expert, blood spatter, fingerprints. Um, Sometimes it involves arson, explosives. They're private investigators, cell phone data, especially now, CSLI location data.
It's
And I'll get to
amazing.
that in a second because that's also important to know.
Yeah.
It's one for this case. The biggest thing with a murder case is where the body is found is not necessarily the crime scene. That's not necessarily where the crime took place.
True. True.
Obviously, if there's a shooting and it's on video and there's eyewitnesses, the person drops down, that's where it was shot, right?
Right.
But 10 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, because nothing's for sure, that started somewhere else, and they want to track down where did this start, and where can we see the how and the why. The problem here is that where the body is found, the prosecution wants you to think, well, that's where he died, that's the crime scene, that's where the car hit him.
Right.
Well, in order to come to that conclusion, they're supposed to investigate, not show up at the crime scene and say, this is the story we're going with. These are our buddies, our cop friends that live at this house. We need to protect them at all costs. And say
Why
it was
wasn't it properly done? I mean, what about a motion to suppress or motion to exclude? Like, why wasn't it properly done? Like, why didn't they? I mean, that's like a big deal, especially in a place like, what town was it? This was in Canton?
so there's two reasons. One is, was it a sloppy investigation? That usually doesn't involve a concerted effort with a whole team of people, none of them knowing what they're doing. Or was it intentionally sloppy, aka a coordinated, concerted effort to ignore or protect somebody and put everything towards their version of events, which points to Karen Reed. Karen Reed was not one of them. John O'Keefe really wasn't one of them, but the Alberts, Higgins, they were all part of the same crew in Canton, worked with them, and they're all connected. Crime scene investigation 101. You go in the house, you look using your eyes. When I say you, I
Yeah.
mean the first responders, seeing if anyone else is injured. The homicide detectives usually aren't the first ones to get there. A prosecutor usually is called to the scene who's on call.
Right.
Go in the house, they do an eyeball test, like what's in plain view? Is there a lamp knocked over? Is there a hole punched in the wall? Is there blood on the floor,
Right.
the carpet?
So you're thinking like if they had some sort of a tussle, like a interaction, like the whole place could have been messed up. Like it should have been a little more like fuck, like
There's no question that there could have if their fight happened inside the house, there would have been forensic evidence to support it. It's one thing to say, look, the investigators went in the house, the crime scene investigators went in the house, the DNA people, they go to the scene and collect evidence. They went in the house, they swabbed everything, they took pieces of the carpet, they went off the furniture, they swabbed the dog's mouth, they took DNA off people's arms and
who
off
did that again? So I'm sorry.
the whole thing.
No, who went in and collected that evidence?
Oh, I'm saying
They should have. That's what they should have done.
from the Boston crime lab show up. The
Right.
homicide detectives, they caution it off, they caution tape it off, they protect it, they want to preserve the scene, and they want to collect evidence from the scene. So it's one thing to say, okay, everybody, all the team that works for the prosecutor and Boston police and the crime lab and DNA people, that they go in the house, they wear their masks and they have their blue light.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
they went in, let's say they all went in, they turned that place upside down. No forensic evidence that showed that John O'Keefe, who died, was ever in the house. Well, guess what? They got Karen Reed pretty much dead to rights, no pun intended. However, they didn't do that here. The most plausible reason why any of the detectives, any of the police, any crime scene people, EMTs, anybody, why none of them who were investigating this that night, who responded to the scene for a dead body in the front lawn, none of them went in the house. Why would they do that? That's not one person being sloppy. That's not, okay, we overwrote a video, or we forgot to
Right.
swab from the arm of the couch, or we forgot to put those protective booties on so we didn't track through the crime scene. Not one person who showed up, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people at that scene, not one of them went inside.
At least
What?
does that have to? Does that go to being like not? It's not. Canton's not like a small town, but does that go to like being not prepared as a town, like to do something like that? Do you
I
think?
think you said it right the first time, but for a different reason. It goes to a small town mentality or small town feel where everyone protects each other. It's not just the
Okay.
blue line, it's the smaller town blue.
Okay. Okay.
Austin, this is not Lowell. This is not something that, hundreds of people are outside taking videos. This is in a small, quiet suburban neighborhood,
Right. Right.
and it was a blizzard.
What
They
about like the dog? Like, there's no dog marks on this guy's leg, right? Like, didn't they say there was a dog that like attacked him? Like, what's the deal with that? Like,
So what happened, and I keep harping on the fact that they didn't go in. They didn't go in and say, look, there's no forensic evidence. This is Karen Reed did this, right? They actually just never went in the house. So
yeah.
we'll never know what evidence was in the house that's no longer there. The FBI got involved in investigating this case. and again, 16 murder trials, more murder cases that I've worked on. Not once has the FBI been involved in any of those cases. The FBI gets involved because there's something sketchy going on with
Right.
the investigation. The Canton police are investigating cops that live in their town that know them, that grew up there. Think about it,
Right.
right? That is a conflict of interest, right? So the
Yeah.
feds get involved months later. The feds get a search warrant and go in the house, the Albert's house. Again, this is months later, right?
Months later. Months later.
DNA can survive, blood can survive, this can survive, right?
Really.
DNA
Right.
can last years on something, fingerprints.
What
You
if you
know,
have a house cleaner that comes every couple weeks? I
I
mean,
guess we'll see how good they are at their job.
right. I mean,
Um,
that just, I don't know. So the nexus between,
but how about the fact that they had rehabbed, I think it was the basement, the carpet was gone in the basement. They repainted it. The dog had been given away and mysteriously disappeared. So the FBI shows
really,
up
yeah,
and everything's been changed, painted over, removed,
right,
literally removed
right,
evidence.
yeah, yeah.
Why would someone do that?
I don't know.
Because it had blood on it, because it had John O'Keefe's DNA on it, because it had evidence that this wasn't Karen Reed. Now, I'm speculating, right? But the
I want to
point,
know like how. So going back to that, like that's incredible. But going back to that, I want to know like how much they freaking hated this guy. You know, like you really have to like hate. I mean, this is like
well, at the time that they killed him, or are you talking about after the fact?
no. At the time they killed him, like
I mean, they were all drinking. And right, how guys get when they
well,
get,
I don't know the type of guys I hang out. We don't, I don't know.
and
Different
I
type of
don't mean to say
people.
just guys, girls too. When people
Girl,
are
sorry, the type of people. Yeah, all right. Anyway,
when people are drinking, they get very fired up. There's more fights that happen. I've had countless shootings because it started in a bar
wow.
fight. It spilled outside, right? So
Okay.
one small little thing, one small little comment. Did Higgins say something to John O'Keefe that set him off about Karen? Oh, where's your little hottie? Something like that, right? And maybe they didn't kill him inside that house. I'm not saying this was a planned first degree murder. I'm saying think about the possibility that there was a physical fight, a fist fight inside that house between John O'Keefe and these other guys, one or all of them. The dog got involved and bit and made marks on John O'Keefe's arm. And then they dumped him in the snow still alive. And we're like, shit, we got to clean this up. And
Yeah.
then several hours went by before Karen showed back up and found the body. They had time to plan this, right? And this is what the defense is saying. The Alberts, Higgins, McCabe's, they had time to come up with a story. And it's kind of amazing. You're like, well, how could all of them just be on the same page like this and come up with something? But it was either them or Karen.
Well, what about the so we talked about you touched on their evidence, like that sort of thing, like and how they painted over the walls. They did all this. I mean, I still don't know what they would have done. I don't know about if it was a dog attack, if they punched him in the face, if they choked him out. I don't know. But what
Then there
about
would be evidence in the house. It wouldn't say who started the fight, right? But the prosecution is saying John O'Keefe never set foot in the house. He was killed before he set foot in the house. Karen Reed ran him over and took off when she dropped him off.
right?
That
So what about that? Like, what about the the tail, not the tail light, the headlight that was broken and like
so
like and then her excited utterances. I kind of want to go into that a little bit. Like what? So we talked about, you know, the prosecute. Like we. So tell me what you think happened from like Karen's point of view. Like when she dropped him off. Like, do you think if she would have hit him, does
so
that break the light? Does that break the light? I mean, she was going like what 60 miles, 40 miles an hour or something. I forgot what they said.
so I think it was less than that,
20,
but
probably 20. Like it's hard to
according
go
to an
40.
accident reconstruction expert, right?
Yeah.
She would have had to been going a specific mile an hour in order to cause the type of blunt force trauma, which is what the cause of death was. It was blunt force trauma and hypothermia. That's what the medical examiner said.
Okay.
Technically, those don't tell you when he was killed, really how he was killed, or by who he was killed, or with what. The important thing is with what? Was it with someone's fist? Was it with a lamp? Was it with a car? Blunt force trauma can be anything. It doesn't tell you what the murder or homicide weapon is. That's why we had such a battle of the experts at the last trial, and I expect that to be another huge issue with this trial. It could have been either. Blunt force trauma is just there was a big amount of trauma by some object that's not sharp, right? Not a knife, not a pen, not something identifiable by its imprint,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Something blunt, a car, a fist, some sort of object, right?
Yeah.
So there's two experts, one for the defense and one for the prosecution. There's also the prosecution's expert saying the scrapes on his arm. John O'Keefe had scrapes all up and down his arms. Prosecution's expert saying that's consistent. They can't say it definitely was, right? But to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that those injuries are consistent with a taillight being broken and scraping his arm. But then you have the defense expert getting up and saying, well, those scrapes are consistent with a dog bite. But how do you prove or disprove either? I mean, the defense doesn't have to disprove or prove anything. It's the prosecution's burden.
Right.
We have two competing stories here with evidence to support both.
Right.
What you have to look at is whose burden it is. This isn't about which is more possible, which is more plausible, which is more likely. This is about beyond a reasonable doubt. It has to be that Karen either intentionally under second degree murdered him with the car or drove him over under the influence of alcohol
Right.
in a manslaughter fashion. They have to prove that. That's an uphill battle. It would have been nice if they had gone in the house and said, okay, we know that O'Keefe wasn't in the house. We know he was killed out in the driveway. We know that's the crime scene. We don't know where the crime scene was. We don't know where he was killed, and we don't know with what he was killed. A car?
Right.
They're not saying the dog killed him per se, but the dog was involved in the defense theory. Physical fight, dog jumps up and bites, right? Where people are fighting in the house. The dog's mysteriously gone. Could have swabbed DNA from the dog's mouth if it had John O'Keefe's DNA in his mouth,
Right.
because it wasn't Karen.
Right.
But then you have, Karen comes back the next, is out looking for him. She comes back, she finds the body. They call the police, EMTs show up, everyone comes out of the house, and she goes, "Oh my God." And the excited utterance, which is when someone blurts something out under the influence of a traumatic event in the moment. So there's no thought involved, it's just you blurt it out. Her excited utterances were, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him.
Right.
The problem with reading that, right? Or somebody, an EMT testifying and another witness testifying that they heard her say that. The problem with that is we don't know how it was said. Was it, I hit him, I hit him? That sounds like a confession, right? Or was it, oh my God, I hit him? I hit him?
Yeah, but what about does the
Right?
testimony help with that at all?
What?
Does the testimony have help with that at all? Like you were just saying?
Well,
Like,
she didn't testify.
no, but the manner you said the EMT testified maybe to those statements, or does that become hearsay? I mean, I know it's an exception to the
So
hearsay
it is
rule.
hearsay, but there's an exception to hearsay when you're,
No, the excited utterance is accepted to hearsay, right? I get that, but can the EMT say this is the way that she said it?
they can, but isn't that subjective too?
Yeah, I don't
Think
know.
about think about if we all have, we have a conversation. I could think I was like, oh wow, that was like really snippy of that person. And you might be like, oh really? I didn't think it was snippy. I thought it was a normal conversation. Both of us perceive the same event differently because we receive it within our experiences and our life experiences.
Yep.
So an EMT and a witness saying, this is how she said it, it comes in as evidence. But you
Right.
have to play it as a game of telephone. And the more people that are involved between the source and when it comes into court, the less reliable it is, or the more interpretation is required by an intervening person.
Okay.
It's not as open and shut as if you record somebody's statement or someone has it on video, you can hear the tone, right? We don't know what was in Karen's mind when she said that, and
Yeah.
we don't know the exact tone and how she meant
I
it.
think the tone is the biggest thing, like to
Dude,
try
was it
to
a question or a statement,
and you go back to reasonable doubt, just for everybody out there, when you are not firmly convinced of a defendant's guilt after you considered all the evidence, and there's no other reasonable explanation. So it is the prosecutor's burden. You can't have any doubt. And with this case, it seems like it's happened so long ago, and there's so many moving pieces, and I don't know how, like, the jury was it was already a hung jury. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's just it seems like one of those things where it's very interesting. I think people are really drawn to this because there's two completely different sides of the story. It's like, Group A believes one thing, Group B believes another thing, and like,
And people are
like
into it.
how can you? Yeah, I mean, like people are picketing. Like there's people outside the courthouse. I mean, how can you pick a jury at least? Like, tell us about the jury process a little bit too.
So this is also pretty wild.
Yeah.
So the case is being heard in the county and in the town Dedham, which is right down the street from Canton, by a judge, Judge Canoni, who the defense
Mhm.
have actually tried to ask her to recuse herself because she has a connection with the Alberts. Now, remember, the Alberts are who had the after party, who the defense is saying
What's
they
her
had.
connection with them? She was serving the drinks. No, I'm
So,
just kidding. Sorry.
um, apparently, allegedly has socialized with them, with the Alberts. So maybe she also has a connection. Someone in her family has represented, I think, Colin Albert, who is also at the party at Brian Albert's house.
Yeah.
Represented him. He's got a little bit of a sordid past, a little violent history to him.
Nice.
He's had some involvement with the law. So you have some connections here, and then you have a jury, and now round two is even worse, right? To try to get an impartial jury. Who hasn't heard about this around here? Social media, the news, every channel, every
Everybody.
Facebook, Instagram, everywhere, Snapchat, everyone is talking about it everywhere. People are picketing outside.
Right. So what do you got to pick a jury from Florida? Like, what are they from Mars? Like, what are they doing?
The defense tried to recuse the judge.
Yeah.
Problem with asking a judge to recuse themselves is the judge themselves is the one that makes the decision whether they're biased or not. And the judge said, "Well, I'm not biased. I'm going to stay on this trial."
What about
Which,
this? Doesn't have to do with the jury, but what about a venue, like a different venue changed?
yeah, they did a motion for change of venue. That is a little bit more unusual, but it is possible.
Yeah.
Um, that's not happening. They're picking a jury and trying to get an impartial jury. Round one was a little bit easier, but round two, now the last trial was last summer. People really have not stopped talking
I
about
mean,
it.
and I don't honestly like. I don't see how the prosecution can go past reasonable doubt. Like, I don't know how you can. And this is just from somebody who's not a. I mean, I did win that award, but I'm not like a criminal defense attorney. So, like, I don't know how you can go past reasonable doubt. I don't know how you preserve evidence like for that long and can prove something. I mean, it seems very difficult to me.
It's wild. The majority of the trials I work on and do, the homicide trials, they take 2, 3, 4, 5 years sometimes to go to
Yeah.
trial. So there is a lot of preservation that needs to happen. There's a lot of memories that fade, right? Witnesses, like, you don't remember something years later that you did, that was fresh at the time. So it's very tricky. People can die, people can move, you can lose witnesses.
Yep.
Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, since the last trial, he was on leave. He testified at the last trial. He's since been fired from the police, lost his
Yeah.
pension. He's completely disgraced. Are they going to call him this time? Maybe the defense is going to call him. He had a whole bunch of text messages from his personal phone once the FBI got involved. Fallacious texts about talking about Karen Reed, from how hot she was physically to I hope she dies by suicide to let's make sure the evidence points to her. I mean, he was the lead homicide investigator, Mass State Police, on this case, and he's sending text messages like that
Yeah.
to people. So he's off the case now, but that's after 3 years of investigation, 2 years of investigation that he did. You can't untaint that later. You have to try to peel it back and say, is there enough
Right. Right.
to still prove this, even though
I mean, you're gonna have to find people who are living under a rock, like to be on the jury. You know what I mean? Like, they're gonna have to be
not
people
just
who
right.
are just like don't believe in streaming TV. I mean, these are people
And
who
who doesn't have an opinion about it,
don't
right?
have an opinion. They don't care about the law. They just kind of like. I mean, you really got to seek out these people. I
Yeah.
mean, because it's going to be hard to find. I mean, why not put it on a judge? Like, what's the rule that says we can't? I know everybody, you're entitled to a jury or whatever, but like, Make a judge make the decision, no?
Well, there's first of all, there's so much pressure on a first, well, this is a second degree murder, but there's so much pressure on a murder because it's a life sentence.
Yeah.
And not only is there pressure, there's pressure on a jury, right? But at
Yeah.
least there's a whole group of them deliberating, right? 12 of them
Yeah.
deliberating.
Yeah.
You put it on one judge. Now, this judge
That's a
who
lot. That's a lot.
seemingly knows the cops that are involved, that's way too risky. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put this on her. She's subject to outside influence. Um, it's too close. It's too close and it's too heavy. And the judge is a lot of pressure to let an accused murderer go,
Yeah.
right? Pressure
Yeah.
on a jury for that too. But you really have to look at this as a juror, as a layperson, as a lawyer is not involved in the case, as what evidence is there? What evidence is there beyond a reasonable doubt? And we have things on both sides. Was there, friction between Karen and John? Yeah, there was. She left him messages. Where the F are you? There were a whole bunch of voicemails that came in that night. I F and hate you. I hope you die, stuff like that, right?
Right, right.
She had disdain for him that night. She'd been drinking, so she was very forthcoming about that. But also, if you're going to kill him, why are you going to do that? Now, the prosecution's going to say, well, that was an attempt to divert it, right? To cover it
I mean,
up.
she could have just rammed right into him. The guy falls in the snow, and that's it. I mean, that's. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If this jury, if it's another mistrial, and this guy and the jury's hung,
Yeah.
like what would happen? I mean, do they? What happens after like a second go round of this?
I'm just trying to put a light in here because it's getting dark. Um, they can try it again.
Really? Okay.
There's another mistrial, they can try it again. It's an interesting thing. So if the jury comes back with a verdict, it needs to be unanimous guilty or unanimous not guilty. Um, if there's a hung jury, if there's even one person not in agreement,
Yeah.
declared a mistrial or declared a mistrial for other
Right.
reasons, they can come back and try it again, and they can come back and try it again after that, and they can come back and try it again after that. They can do three, four,
I
five
mean, what
trials.
about these attorneys? Like as us, like as lawyers, like are there people that are
Or they're
always
tired.
no, but are they always are they gonna want to be putting on that case again? Are they gonna want to be defending again? Are they gonna want to be I mean, how is she
They're
paying
all in on
as a,
this.
from a human perspective, like how is she paying for this or is she not? Because her attorneys are getting so much they're getting so much exposure that they'll get other cases. Like, I mean, what's your thought on that?
So, her two attorneys, David Yannetti and Alan Jackson. So, David Yannetti is local. He's a very well respected attorney, very well respected defense attorney. And Karen hired him, and then she brought in Alan Jackson, who's actually native to California, to LA. She reached out to him via email and asked him to join her legal team, and then hired him to come out. In terms of what the financial arrangement was, I don't have any direct or personal knowledge
Yeah,
about that. But Alan Jackson is a celebrity lawyer. He represents famous people.
really.
He's familiar with this type of pressure with the media and social media and all these people and people with opinions. So pretty, smart move on her point to hire somebody like that. Um, but also he may be doing this for not as much money as you might think, because like you said,
Yeah,
lawyers like attention. Hard
really.
to imagine.
They do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're very shy, especially trial lawyers. We're very shy.
yeah. They're all amazing. So like, do you think we should do like I mean, do you want to say anything else about this case, or do you think we should
I have
wrap it
100
up?
other things to say about this.
I know. Okay, do you want to
We
go
have a
on with
round two.
it? What's that? Or do you want to wrap it up? Do you want to go on to a round two a few weeks down the road, or do you want to say anything else about it, Elise?
Yeah, we can wrap this up for now. So we're ending here. The trial hasn't started. It's expected to start next week,
Nice.
which is Tuesday, I think the 8th. They're appealing some issues right now that could get delayed. The next time we talk, trial's probably going to be ongoing. There's going to be a lot more to talk about. There will be some of the same experts will come, some new experts will come. There's a lot to look at here. You can watch the first trial online. They streamed it all live last summer. They still have it on YouTube and a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting case. It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. Everybody's watching this, with their popcorn, at least here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It's what everyone's talking about. From when I leave the house to when I come home at night, text in person, everyone wants to talk about this case. So if you don't know about it, read up on it. Very interesting.
No pun intended.
Did Karen read up?
Karen, read up on it. No pun. Dad joke. I'm sorry.
Good dad joke. Don't be sorry. I almost blew right by it. I'm glad you drew my attention.
Wow.
Um, did Karen Reed kill John O'Keefe, or was it a cover up by police because the people at the Alberts, actually did it and they got in a fight with him and dumped him in the snow? We'll find out, but let's keep talking about it.
Yeah, we will. Elyse Hershon, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
It's
Thank
the
you, Lloyd.
very first little episode of this type, so we appreciate you being a pioneer of its sort. All right,
Awesome.
stay right there. Everybody, thanks for checking this out. We'll be back with some more amazing podcasts wherever you are in the world today. Enjoy yourselves. Cheers.